Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. Delicious Dwaylen is still on hiatus right now, but fortunately, this week we have our good friend Justin from the TNC SportsTalk to throw in. He has joined us to help co-host the show. How you doing, Justin?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing
It's
good.
nice and white outside. The Christmas that we didn't have a couple weeks ago, and wherever you guys are at, whenever you guys are listening to this, just hopefully you guys know we wish you safety
Yes,
and
absolutely.
well-being.
If you don't have to be on the road, don't be on the road because I actually drove my wife to work this morning. And because I mean, she can drive in the snow, but she gets a little skittish. And not only
Yeah,
that, but we were thinking because right now where she works at a tax preparation place, and of course right now it's tax season, and so their hours have been ramped up some, and so she was not going to get off work until at least good half an hour past her normal time. But my son has an appointment,
hmm
but now we've actually I think we've already can't my wife has already texted the guy. It was my son's saxophone lesson. She's already canceled that because that's a good 30 minutes away even without snow.
yeah,
And so I drove her. I was going to drive her anyway because of that. But then with the snow, I drive a little bit better in snow, I guess. And, so I took her to work and yeah, I was still kind of sliding. Yeah, these roads are just nasty because we live on a back road. We live on a back
okay,
road off of a back road. And, so they don't plow our road. It's rare because they have to hit the main roads, which I get, but they canceled school today. Um, we're actually homeschooling our son anyway right now, just because of
hmm
issues with the school. I mean, if anybody's listened to a long time, they already know. So it didn't affect him, but of course, all the other kids in the area, of course, they're not going to school because they don't plow the back roads. And this area is a
hmm
lot of back roads because there's a
or
lot of
by the time they get to the back roads, it would be like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
exactly. And when I actually walked out right before I came into the office to hit you up to come on the show, I was looking at where I walked just to get to the car, and then I looked where the tracks were, and those tracks are almost already filled back in with the fallen snow.
Wow.
So yeah, it's still coming down, and you
When
know,
and then like I live what 30, 40 minutes away from Mount Orab down in northern Kentucky.
something like that.
And
Yeah,
my wife, she'll take the car to work in the morning because I got nowhere to be. We got a message at 4 o'clock in the morning saying school's out of session because of the snow. We got probably like a good 2, 3 inches, I want to
yep,
say. Car was filled. I went out there at like 5:30, getting the car warmed up for her, brushed it off, took like a solid 20 minutes. The only good news was is that it wasn't sticking. It was nice, easily brushed off.
right.
Um, but we live on a main road, off of a main road into apartment complex. They don't touch the apartment complex at all. So you just have to be able to drive safely to get out. But it was a good, nice blanket of snow. Wasn't as cold. It was pretty moderate. I would have done well, if I had to be in it. But I know this kind of always generates some sort of maybe panic or uncertainty, and people find a lot of difficulties driving in the snow. So, you know, whatever situation anyone's in, I would hate for some terrible action to happen because of the weather.
Or because people think, oh, snow that means drive faster. No, that's not how it works. And I know
Yeah.
you growing up in San Diego, I don't know how much snow you saw in your lifetime,
Nope.
but
Even we try to go up to Mount Julian, which is like the closest place from San Diego to see snow. By the time we get up there, it's all melted. So,
right.
uh, out here was like kind of like the first true snow test. And I've used to work in downtown Cincy. Once I moved down here, so I've had my fair share. But it's you got it, and I think a lot of people do not provide themselves the right amount of time to get all the snow off their cart properly, and they don't provide them enough time to get to and from work. You know, guilty as charged as me, I leave 15 minutes before I have to go to work, regardless where I'm at, and regardless how long it takes. But you got to consider in that driving factor that it's going to take some more
Hmm.
time. You got to consider accidents or slow driving, and you got to build patience for that. So provide yourself extra time, whether it's rain, fog, snow. mist, I don't care, lightning storm, whatever the case may be. Try to be considerate, buy yourself more time so you could take your time to get to work. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people speed, because they
Hmm.
just wake up, roll out of bed, business as usual, and then they find themselves running behind.
And they're speeding to get to a job that would you ask them how they like their job and they'll tell you that they hate it. So, um,
Uh,
but you know, moving on from, the great snowpocalypse of 2024. And today's topic is actually going to be the Royal Rumble, but you and I were actually having a pretty interesting conversation before that about,
Before we get to that, can I ask you a question?
sure, always.
Is this our technical first snow weather where a good amount of snow has fallen, stuck on the ground for a period of time this year or this season? I know we had some flurries back in December here and there, but nothing really
Nothing like this.
realistically to
No,
stick. No.
no. I mean, we had a little bit that stuck on the ground. It didn't stick to the roads,
Yeah.
back in December. But a buddy of
Compared to last
mine,
year, with Christmas Eve last year, that snowstorm that came through, people couldn't go anywhere that weekend last year. Remember that?
yeah, sort of. I mean, but a buddy of mine who he actually lives close to you, lives in Florence. But I've known him since I was stationed in Japan because I actually
Okay.
worked. His wife was in the Air Force. He was in the Navy.
Yeah.
Then he ended up getting out of the Navy and he came over there to join her. But I knew them in Japan and then I knew them in Maryland and now they live in Florence. So, I mean, and they've been some of our closest friends, but today is his birthday. And
Oh,
I texted
well,
him and
happy
said, "Hey,
birthday.
yeah," told him, "Hey, Dave, happy birthday." And he said, "Thanks." He said, "Yeah, that white Christmas that we didn't have, apparently, it came from my birthday instead."
Right.
You know, um, but you had texted me talking about AEW and their well, I don't know if you call it their lack of marketing.
Right.
Um,
Well, okay. So if I can provide just a little content here, um, the whole idea of bringing that conversation up with you is that I was listening to a podcast and I can't remember the podcast name. They were celebrating 100 episodes, and Brian Alvarez, a a reliable source reporter for professional wrestling, I believe, right? I would say,
yeah, I mean, he's a
um,
he's a dirt sheet writer, but at the same time, I mean, they do get good information.
he's one of the guys that I would, if it's written
He's
by him, I'd listen to.
he can be trusted, I think.
Okay, so
So,
he was on the episode and he was talking about the difference between what WWE is doing right now and what AEW's experience. And one of the things that we're noticing in AEW lately is maybe the lack of crowd, the lack of attendance that we're seeing at the venues and whatnot. And he made couple valid points. And they're talking more because he's out in Seattle, out in the West Coast, and he was like, "Well, when the AEW comes into Seattle, there's no billboards, there's no local promotion or advertisement going on. And even just with Dynamite or Rampage or Collision that's over the weekend, there's really not a whole lot of promotion that happens compared to what WWE provides, right?
right.
They have not just you could anywhere you could turn it to local news and you'll see WWE promotions half the time. So he said that was one of the big things. And then the other one, whether you go out to a live show or to a house show, they don't really build up the card. You go out to a WWE live show, they're going to say, hey, Seth Rollins is there. Um, Cody Rhodes will be in action. Punk will be in action. So they're going to give you a reason to come out to the arena. AEW doesn't do it. Sometimes they have those matches after, on WWE, SmackDown, Raw. Sometimes they have those matches afterwards
Hmm.
to that only if you bought a ticket and you attended, you will get to see that no one else gets to see really.
Right.
So AEW doesn't provide that. You recently just went to an AEW event last fall.
Hmm.
And, I don't, from my understanding through you, the experience was okay because you never been, but it wasn't like, I didn't get the feeling that you would go again unless you got some free tickets type thing.
I don't know. Being a wrestling fan and AEW, I mean, they're still for now anyway, they're still the number two company behind WWE.
Right.
Now TNA is making a run for it. TNA all of a sudden they're rebuilding, but
It
Um,
looks pretty good, I gotta
yeah.
say.
I would probably still go to an AEW show, but it honestly kind of depends on what state the company's in at the time. Because if the action in the ring, if what they're doing is garbage, I'm probably not going to go. I mean, and
Right.
I mean that honestly because um, during the Monday Night Wars, if I'd had a chance to go to choose between WCW or WWF, I probably would have chosen WCW. And this is at the height of it. Um,
Right.
but in the year and a half or so before WCW folded, I probably would not have gone to see WCW show because what I'm seeing on TV is kind of indicative of what you're going to see live. And what I
Mhm.
was seeing on the shows on Nitro and at the time Thunder was just it was getting bad. And I'm like, why would I pay money to see that? Now the action in the AEW ring when I saw it was still good. The matches were
Right.
still good. I actually got to see Jade Cargill's last match in AEW live.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So I mean, that I didn't know it was going to be her last match. They didn't advertise it was her last
See,
match, but
I mean, I think the only due diligence they've done is they've been promoting. I think they've been promoting the hell out of Sting's retirement. So every city
yes.
Sting is going to perform in, they've been giving him the due diligence or the credit, right? The forefront of, hey, he's coming into town. This is the last chance you're going to see Sting compete in your city ever. And I think, did Sting perform last time when you went?
No.
No. So
no,
I
he
mean,
he did not perform.
and now he's a guy who would, if I know he's performing, I go to see any day of the week, even if he just shows up and he's at ringside or he comes out and gives a promo because Sting. Sure, you have an old episode yourself you could cover on him. He's a legacy alone,
Mm-hmm.
and but I just I have yet to be. There's only AEW's only been in Cincinnati twice. I have yet to. I will not make a drive
At
down to
least
Lexington or three
three
times.
times. At
Really?
least three
Okay.
times. Yeah.
I have yet to attend. I argue. I would like to go, but I argue with myself if it's worth going to a AEW event because what I mean. Yeah, you have the talent's still good. You're getting really good matches. I'm not saying it's a 5-star match, but you're getting good raw talent matches, right? Quality matches. But if it's the same thing that you can do, saving yourself 40, $50 that you can watch in the luxury of your home, and you're not really getting anything extra that separates the difference of you going, whether to you staying, then for me, it just begs the difference of why go?
I mean, the show, like I said, the show itself was good. I had already been seeing the reports that were coming out of some of the other AEW shows, like the Dynamites and the
Mm-hmm.
Rampage. Well, they do Dynamite, and they take a little bit of an intermission, then they film
Right.
Rampage. And I'd already seen the reports saying, well, half the arena is empty. They have
Right.
everybody packed on one side. Well, guess what? Heritage
It's
Bank
true.
Center, Cincinnati was the same way. We
And
were all packed
WWE's
on.
gone through that too. You
Yep,
can't.
WWE has gone through that.
They still go through that. I mean,
Yep.
the last time I saw it packed to house was day one, Monday Night Raw in
Right.
San Diego. That was it.
And when you start seeing that, but of course, a lot of the people who have been posting things like that are people who they just do not like AEW, and so any chance they have to slam AEW, they're going to take it. Now, I
Right,
mean,
but I mean, AEW can't hide under, hey, we are the second best company, therefore we are doing things that are not true. It's okay not to be sold out.
mhm.
I think we talked about this, and I don't know if you ever brought this up on a show, but I wonder if they're not being sold out, and which is nothing against them. They're still such a new company. It's only hasn't been barely 5 years. Coming up, this is
It'll
their
be it'll
fifth
be yeah,
year.
this will be they'll hit 5 years
I
this
still
year.
consider them very new, but they are also holding it in venues so large that they're expecting that they think that they're going to get 20, 30,000 people, and they're just not, unfortunately.
Um, they the first time they came to Cincinnati, they did not go to the Heritage Bank
No, they
Center or
did
Bank
not.
Arena. They went to
The
I think it
convention
was
center?
maybe it was over. I think it was Xavier's Arena that they
Okay.
they used. I can't remember the name of it. Now the next time they came, and this last time they went to Heritage Bank Arena, because the first time they went to Heritage Bank Arena, Heritage Bank Center, whatever the crap it's called,
Okay.
they actually did fill it up because that was the show where my friends Jamie and John from True Crime Cast / Bless Their Hearts, they were there along with Nate Metz, who runs Stove Lake Media.
And this was the first time they attended, or the
Uh,
second time.
this was the second show that was in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And that because there's actually a picture, it was the Briscoe brother, the surviving Briscoe brother. I can't remember his
Yes.
name.
Okay.
There's a picture of him. He had jumped off like the corner, and this is like outside the ring, and
Right.
he's jumping on somebody who's on the table, and you see a fan, and he's standing there with his hands like this. I mean, he's into it. Well, that fan, that's John from
Yeah.
True Crime Cast. They just happened to be sitting right there. They had front row tickets because
Okay.
they are actually friends with Chris Jericho,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
they've they've been on Chris Jericho's podcast, and he's actually been on theirs,
That's
talking
neat.
about crime stuff. So and so they were able to get front row tickets. And the funny thing is, you see Nate looking at his cell phone when that's going on, but that place was
Uh,
packed. I mean, they even talked about how packed it was, and then a year
yeah.
later, all of a sudden, it
Well,
wasn't.
well, okay. So then, because I'm gonna, I really truly, because they haven't been to they haven't been down here so often. So, you get, I just feel times, because out, we're still coming off of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first few times that they really, so maybe the first time they weren't really that, they didn't get that noted. They weren't that noticed that, hey, they're coming out here. Right. And that's the other thing that is probably another, reason. There's no billboard signing. There's not a lot of, local promotions. There's no, I mean, unless you're a wrestling fan following, hardcorely AEW or, their fan page, you're not really knowing. There's a lot of people that don't even know if they come into town half the time, or by the time they come, they know it's too late to get tickets because it's not in their financial budget anymore. But so, and it is a hit or miss, I think. But you go out the first time in Cincinnati or the second time in Cincinnati, I expect a bigger pop. But now, since people are starting to catch on, I would trade. I would honestly trade a smaller venue. WWE does not always make a big hype in the arena that they're in, because they do go into college arenas at times
Mm-hmm.
to have shows. I've seen it done before. They still do it out here in the mid east,
They do it up
Midwest.
in Columbus.
Yeah.
They
And
always go to
so,
the basketball arena for Ohio State.
which is a little bit smaller, not as, you're not holding 20,000, 30,000 people in the arena. So, and that's fine, because for me, sponsor,
Sorry,
let's go.
sorry, I have to show my armchair booking tumbler, which, by the way, unfortunately,
I still have
um,
mine.
T Public do not sell the tumblers anymore. They still sell the coffee mugs. They
Do
don't
they
sell the
officially
tumblers.
got rid of them?
Yeah, they got rid of them over a year ago, because I actually I emailed and asked, "Hey, what happened to the tumblers?" Said, "Yeah, we don't sell those anymore."
Okay, because remember, like, it was like a long time ago. I told you that I still had the option on mine, but I don't know. But anyways, my point is that I know it's a hit or miss, but if you ask me, I'd rather fill a smaller venue, knowing that I'm gonna get a like packed full crowd. That way, I could show off the entire. Because I'd rather show off the entire venue saying it's full, compared to showing off, having to play camera roulette with what angles I get.
Right.
My
Um,
opinion, but
but I mean, I think right now it's the old saying, and I know it's kind of a cop out saying, but it is what it is. AEW, it's up to them. It's their responsibility to build it back up. And Tony Khan is not helping them. I just fear that, or get kind of concerned that AEW, they're making some of the same mistakes WCW made, and Tony Khan's not listening to the people who may have been in WCW when it eventually fell. He's not
right.
listening to them tell him, look, don't do this. That includes Sting. That includes Tony Schiavone. That includes, some of the other ones who were there when everything collapsed.
Right. I mean, and then you go listen to a guy like Jericho, who was in,
He had already jumped to WWF, but
but
because
he
he
still
saw
knew
the,
what was
oh yeah,
happening.
he saw
And
the ship was sinking, and he's like, I got to go. So, but he actually, Chris Jericho, and this one of the last things before we got to move on. But Chris Jericho, I mean, he helped build up AEW. Cody Rhodes helped build up AEW, but then Cody Rhodes started getting left out in the cold and some of the things. He just wasn't happy. But you have people who are the executives who are also wrestlers. So, of course, they're putting some of the storylines about them. They're putting themselves in the spotlight. That was actually something else that hurt WCW. And actually, Jim Crockett and Mid Atlantic before that. And now, I mean, unfortunately, well, Cody Rhodes' dad, Dusty Rhodes, was notorious for doing that. He was really pushing himself, at times
I mean, I
where
can tell you
he
right
shouldn't have
now,
been.
I don't like the Young Bucks. The fact, I mean, I like the Young Bucks. I don't like the idea that they came out last week to, earlier this week and to ruin the Sting's last match.
And they're saying now the Young Bucks might actually be Sting's last opponent. But I can tell you right now, sorry, I grabbed myself something else to drink.
Fine.
Um, somebody who's going to be there is going to be our friend Ted the Hillbilly Hill.
Yeah.
From the podcast. It used to be called The Hill Truth. Now it's Ted's Takes on Wrestling. But he's a big fan of the Hills. He can tell you all about how Hill should go. I mean, he's just Ted's a genius. I mean, he really is the podfather, but he is fortunate enough to live in North Carolina. And I say fortunate enough for a lot of reasons because I'm kind of partial to North Carolina. I was born there, lived there for almost 15 years. Right down the road from the Hardy Boys, actually, and Shannon Moore, who I tried to get on the show, but apparently he doesn't want to return my phone calls. But anyway, that's another story. Uh, but Ted's actually going to be in Charlotte. He's actually going to go watch Sting's final show, and I'll admit I'll be. In fact, I ought to text Ted right now and say we're recording. I'm talking about you. I am totally jealous because he's actually going to be able to watch that. I mean, that is awesome.
One of my childhood dreams was to go watch The Undertaker at Mania, and I never got a chance to do it. And I've seen him on SmackDown plenty of times, but to see him do the what he's best at doing is at Mania year in and year out. I don't care. I mean, yeah, he's had injuries, he's had concussions. There was, certain things, he was getting old, but he still did it to the best of his ability every year. WrestleMania never disappointed, even though he goes on to say that he didn't have greatest matches. I'm sorry, WrestleMania was his greatest time. That's what Undertaker was there for. And to not be able to see him at, one of my wrestling idols, I put him on my Mount Rushmore, not to be able to see him in that capacity is very upsetting. So Sting's my second. Not to see Sting in his final matches, match, or having got a chance to see Sting at all is very upsetting.
I've seen Sting like in person. I could see him from a distance because I was not about to pay $200 to stand in the line, to actually meet him. Unfortunately,
it'd be worth it.
It maybe
you had the money,
but $200 a little bit, with all the other money I was spending. But I could see him. I got a picture of him like up in a corner at the gymnasium at the Ohio University Chillicothe campus. But one of the things about Undertaker, and this is a good chance for me to segue into the actual topic of the show. How many Royal Rumbles has the Undertaker won? Because you said WrestleMania is his event. Absolutely.
He's won one Royal Rumble. That's his
one.
Right? One.
Yep. One. Now he's had some pretty good moments at the Rumble, but the Rumble was not his thing. He's only won one Rumble, and that was in
2007.
2007. You're absolutely right.
He went to go on and beat Batista when they had the whole Batista World Heavyweight Champion. You had Bobby Lashley, ECW champion, I believe. And that was also, yeah. And did that become the year that it was the hair versus hair with Lashley and Umaga?
Yes,
because then they caused Bobby to CM Punk, and it was CM Punk versus I want to say his name. I may be wrong, but is it Chris? Or was it with somebody else?
Talking about Punk and Benoit?
Yeah. Was that WrestleMania 7 for the ECW championship?
2007 was the year Benoit did
Yes, but
his
that was
heinous act.
later that year, right?
That
Because
was
then
later
he
that
won
year.
the he won the title,
It was
or he
after
lost.
WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let
But was
me,
it Punk and Benoit at WrestleMania?
you know what? Let me.
And then I think
Uh,
Cena had Edge and Big Show or
um,
Triple H.
it was the Mania that was in Detroit. One of the main events was Lashley and Umaga, but uh, Donald Trump was in Lashley's corner, Vince McMahon was in Umaga's corner, and one of those two, the Battle of the Billionaires, was going to get their head shaved, and ended up being, um, you know, VKM, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who got his head shaved. Um, Let me see. You were talking about no, Benoit went against MVP.
Okay, I remember. Yep,
Yep, that was for
United
the
States Championship.
yep. The
I think that
Undertaker.
kicked things off. Did that not? I want to say kicked off the
No,
show.
no.
No, that was the second match. It was the Money in the Bank.
No, it wasn't even the second
No,
match.
no.
It was well, if you include the dark match, it was actually the fourth match.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Sorry, I'm a little all over the place.
let's see. Lashley beat Umaga. Melina beat Ashley Massaro. Cena beat Shawn Michaels. Um,
Oh,
that was a
Cena
match.
and Michaels, but it was Batista. I know it was Batista. This
Batista,
was
yeah, Undertaker beat Batista for the world title.
this was the year. It was what WrestleMania was it? WrestleMania 23. This
Yeah,
was
yeah.
everything was small. They brought everyone back to childhood size as their video package.
Um, well, that one's
Or
Punk was
we are young.
involved, but he was part of the Money in the Bank ladder match.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, so that's what that one was all about. But yeah, the Undertaker's only won one, which he's been
Yes.
involved in some other ones, obviously. But his first one that he was actually in was in 1991. But the very first Rumble, very first Rumble match was actually in 1988, and it was actually held in Canada. And of all people to win it, Hacksaw Duggan. It was
Yes.
a 20-man match, and when you go back and watch it, if you're a fan of the old school wrestling like I am, you can actually, you might enjoy it, but it was a lot different because heels were heels, faces were faces. They did not, um, and you could tell like they would kind of align themselves together when they would get in the ring. Every once in a while, you'd see a heel attack a heel, like Demolition attacking each other when they were the first two in the ring. That wasn't 88. I think that was 90, where Demolition were the first two people in the ring. And, so they went at each other, but the style was a lot different. Um, Now, of course, I mean, a lot of it's almost like Crash TV, but it is a lot more fun and exciting to watch in a way. But, but if you look at some of the names that have been in the Rumbles who did not win, you would think someone like Andre the Giant would win. Andre the Giant's been in two Rumbles, did not win.
So I didn't think that the Royal Rumble, and it's actually very surprising that you didn't see Taker win a lot sooner, knowing that that was literally 17 years since he debuted in the WWE before he finally got that break. But the Rumble, in my opinion, was also an opportunity to give those guys who just needed that little bit extra to get over. You know,
It's really what pushed Kevin Nash back when he had just came in WWF as Diesel.
yeah,
He was the bodyguard for Shawn Michaels. But everyone's like, okay, he's just this big tall. He's 7 foot tall. He's legit 7 foot tall. I've stood next to him, had a picture taken with him. Yeah, the dude. I mean, I felt short next to him, and I'm not. I'm 6'1", and I'm like
right.
looking up at him. But his when he really started getting pushed, the '94 Rumble, when when he came in, and it was really, to me, it was the first time you saw somebody like that, one person who just dominated the Rumble, because
Right.
he came in. Let's see, Owen Hart was in the ring. One of the Steiners was still in the ring. I think it was
Mm.
Scott Steiner was still in the ring. Plus a couple other people. Well, Kevin Nash came in the ring, and he just started tossing fools over the top rope.
He was the Brock Lesnar before Brock Lesnar
Yes,
joined. Yeah.
and he was just standing there waiting. And then, of course, you had like Virgil came out. Well, he took care of
Uh-huh.
him. But in fact, actually, if you watch that back, you'll all of a sudden see it's like, oh, that looks like he's throwing some shots for real. Well, it turns out Virgil was throwing his lefts and rights, and he actually did. He popped Kevin Nash in the face. And so Kevin Nash, kind of when he tossed him out, he put a little bit of pepper behind it. But he thought, I think it was Bob Backlund was another one he threw out. Then he threw out like I think it was Quang, who turned out to be Savio Vega in a mask, but he threw out Quang. And then it was when Randy Savage came in. This was one of Randy Savage's last matches in WWE, actually. When Savage came in, then all of a sudden it kind of it slowed down. But he threw out 7 guys, just by himself before all that. And so that was like, to me, that was the first case of that. Then you saw it a couple years later with Stone Cold. He was in there, Stone Cold. He'd throw somebody, he'd empty the ring and he'd sit in the corner looking at his imaginary watch. And then you had, some of the other ones, Punk. Now, Punk did it like from the beginning of the match and he was doing his promos. And I thought that him doing that, I mean, that was, um, I like the way they did that one. I'm not a huge CM Punk fan. People know that because I think his ability in the ring is above average, but his actions outside the ring, he tries to make everything about CM Punk. I'm not a big fan of that, but the way he did that in the beginning, and he's basically like lecturing everybody, and as soon as somebody comes in, he throw them out, and then he lecture them again. And I mean, it almost looks like a video game in a way, but it's still fun to watch because you're like, okay, is this guy going to make it happen? And then, of course, just a few years ago in 2020, that's when they had Lesnar doing that. He was the champion,
Right.
and of course, when he threw out the first 13 competitors.
I know that's
Yeah. Now they did that partly also. Vince McMahon was really high on Brock Lesnar. He was trying to push, no matter what was going on, he was always going to try to push Lesnar.
right.
You know,
Well, he
um,
was he was your moneymaker at the time. Let's not forget
yeah.
about
I
that
mean, he
because
could definitely,
they referred to him
yeah. I mean, now he can make some money, but I think by this point the fans may have gotten kind of tired of it.
to yeah.
You
Yep.
know, because that was the one. He didn't throw out Ricochet before Drew McIntyre came to the ring. Ricochet hit him with the low blow, and then McIntyre hit him with a Claymore kick, knocked him
Mhm.
out of the ring over the top rope. He's eliminated. Fans just popped like it was, it
We got
was.
to admit at some point though that over 30 years sometimes things become a bit stale, especially when we see a lot of repetition.
Mm-hmm,
I think, and you know what? It's also a good factor because every 4 or 5 years to have those new guys come in and do the same thing, if the same way, if not better. For example, Rey Mysterio lasted the entire Royal Rumble.
yep,
Didn't we
came
see
in.
Gunther last year, who lasted the entire Royal Rumble? Now,
Now he
yep,
lasted a long time.
he came in. I think he came in at number what, 2 or 3, and he lasted until he lasted to, was what, the final two.
He was, yeah, Gunther, I think was the last person thrown out. Let me verify that.
So while you're on top of that, we talk about the room of opportunity breaking in the new guys. You saw AJ Styles, who could have used, he needed a Royal Rumble win to kind of help him push and become just that much better because he had to create his own WWE legacy because everyone kept on referring him back to his indie days. Shinsuke Nakamura, another guy who people knew him prior to coming into the WWE, but he
Mm-hmm.
needed to make his own stamp. And so winning the Royal Rumble did that for him and kind of kept, pushed him up a little bit because maybe you weren't taking him as serious. You know what I'm saying?
Gunther last year he was number one, and he lasted all the way. He
I
was number
mean,
number 29. He
and
and he
now,
he has the longevity record now, an hour, 11 minutes and 40 seconds. By the way, when I talk about any kind of records, I am not including the greatest Royal Rumble over in Saudi Arabia. That
yeah.
was 60 people, and that was like
Was that
that
60?
there were 60 in that one.
Really? I thought it
Yes.
was 50.
You know what?
Or yeah, I thought that was a
You know
50
what?
man Royal
Let
Rumble.
me
I don't
verify
know.
that. I thought it was 60.
That's a bit much. I didn't even know WWE had 60 men on their roster, period.
Well, they were borrowing. Some people made returns. Jericho actually returned just for that match. Let
Still, that I
me
didn't know that was. I thought that was like a 40-man roster. Even like
let
I'm
me.
calling 40.
Oh, it
I
was
think it was
50.
40.
It was 50. I
50.
know, I
Okay.
know, I know it wasn't 40 because there's been one Rumble that was actually 40 people.
Wasn't that when Triple H or
No, it
Roman?
was
No.
Alberto Del Rio.
Oh.
Del Rio. Man,
Yeah.
I can't roll my R's today. My Spanish teacher in high school, he would slap me for that. Um,
So, but yeah, it, I think the Royal Rumble overall has created spotlights. I mean, we can always talk about, and cherish the moments that Kofi Kingston saved himself from the Rumble. You know,
in very
we got to
creative
throw in the
ways. Yeah.
the female Rumble where Mandy Rose gets eliminated but lands on Otis
But
when they
yeah.
had the relationship, and that
Yep.
saved her. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails, but those bring excitement. Plus, you also, what was so great, and I think they kind of fell off a little bit, is that you just didn't know who was next. It also provide a opportunity that if someone was to return to the Royal Rumble, you know, and like for just hypothetical, we saw Jade Cargill in debut at the Rumble number 30.
I, I was honestly going to ask that. Has Jade Cargill wrestled in
I
WWE
thought she was
yet?
injured. No, I thought she got hurt and they weren't ready for her yet.
Okay,
I
because I
don't know.
know she came there and everybody's happy, but I'm like,
But
is she
then
actually going to
is
wrestle?
this year the good time to do it because she doesn't really have any opponents as big as her right now because Charlotte Flair's on the
Yeah, sure.
IL until after WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's going to be
MCL, ACL, I believe she's got
something.
repaired like
Oh, I mean, it's a bad
2 weeks
one.
ago.
Um, I mean, and that's something the your ACL
But
and MCL. That's not something to mess
I know.
around with.
Then what's her name? Breezy just had her knee just reconstructed it like
Yep.
last year.
And she had actually been wrestling on an injured knee for a while. Didn't realize how bad it was until she had the surgery and that put her out for a bit.
And
Yeah,
then now apparently Cora Jade from NXT is out with I think knee injury also.
yeah. I mean, knee injuries are
Um,
very common. Well, I mean, yourself, knee injuries are very common just in sports in general. But when you have an athletic, even if you want to say whatever, it's sports entertainment, but the fact that they land on their knees, literally putting all their body weight on their knees, and that's on purpose. And then when you have something like an accident happen, of course, knee, and they're not knee injuries are not fun because now all of a sudden you're affecting your ability to move. Um,
right.
and so have to use crutches. My wife just had foot surgery, and she could tell you she hated when she was finally able to graduate to using crutches. She hated them. She did not like the knee scooter. She did not. She liked the crutches even less. But she knew it was a necessary evil for her to be able to successfully rehab her foot, which she's walking fine. And she said it still hurts occasionally now,
Right.
but yeah, so any kind of you're dealing with like a knee injury, I mean, because it affects your mobility and it definitely affects your wrestling capabilities. And so Charlotte, I mean, hopefully she can come back. I know some people don't like Charlotte. And it's not that they don't like her wrestling, they don't like how they constantly push her. But I mean, she's also the one she's got a lot of ability. Jade Cargill is also very athletic.
She's Charlotte Flair's the woman to beat in the WWE.
Yeah.
In my
And
opinion, she's the Brock Lesnar of the women's division.
um let me see. Let me look up the female winners. There's only been let's see,
But
one.
I mean, it does. I mean, it's the room of being surprised. And correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like the last couple of years we haven't been surprised because they've been focused on, instead of calling in those names, let's build within the house, and that's fine. They need it, but I, I've lost the element of, all right, who's next? Is that really a big name? And do you really see him or her winning?
Well, last year I was not a fan of Cody winning
Mm-mm.
because I didn't think Cody needed to win a Rumble. He shouldn't have not. He should not have had to win a Rumble to get a title shot. Cody was good enough. I mean, with the name and everything, they could have just given him a title shot, a different kind of feud, without having him win the Rumble. Of course, this was also, I think, this was also before they established the new world title that Seth Rollins has now. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I could definitely be wrong about that, but um, but last year Rhea Ripley now winning the women's Rumble. Oh, I definitely agreed with that. Because Rhea Ripley's earned it. The only other person I think, the only other woman who I would think I would have been backing on that one probably would have been Shayna Baszler, because Shayna Baszler is another one who's definitely earned her place, and she's very legit. They need to put, they need to get a good push behind her. Um, but I don't know. I mean, you're talking about the Rumble being used to kind of push some of the people who would
It
not necessarily gotten a push otherwise. I mean, like I said, Diesel didn't win that Rumble, but it put him on the map.
it did, yeah.
You know,
Kofi Kingston was put on the map.
yep.
You know, I do. This is, I will disagree with you on this. I mean, eventually, when Rhodes comes back, I don't think that they're waiting around to tell his story, that they have years to tell his story. I think they want him to come in, tell his story, and to go. And he is one person who has yet to win the Royal Rumble, or he was one yet to win the Royal Rumble. And I felt like he does deserve a Rumble victory. And so if you didn't give it to him last year, when do you give it to him? Because I feel like now you've established that foundation. Now he knows what he's back for, and he can now work, whether it happens this year, whether it happens next year. It builds him and at that element at the top that, yes, he's already up there, but would he still be as high up if it wasn't for the Rumble? I mean, a lot of people now can reflect back to, like, there are athletes that have won the Rumble and it has been in the name, it's been in the top conversations because of the Rumble and maybe their victory as well.
Well, I mean, some people say having Del Rio win the Rumble, like the 40-man Rumble when it happened, a lot of people were not high on him just because his personality. And now, of course, we know Del Rio, him behind the scenes, he was just not a good person, but I don't know. I mean, but I
I'm
look
not
for,
saying that every Royal Rumble victory was necessary. Del Rio, I didn't see a purpose on why they even pushed him. He wasn't never, it never fit for me, the bill or the storyline.
right.
But I mean, to see like Batista, for example, they could have created another way to go around that storyline instead of him winning a Rumble match.
You're talking about the Batista from 2014 where he came in,
Yes.
he won the Rumble and people booed
Mm-hmm.
it. Of course,
Yeah.
the ironic thing about that year, they booed not him. They were necessarily, it was they booed Roman Reigns not winning that Rumble because
Right.
that was a weird year because they were okay. The fans, when number 30 came out and it was not Daniel Bryan,
Right.
it was Rey Mysterio. They booed Rey Mysterio. How do you boo Rey Mysterio? But it was just they were booing that it was not Daniel Bryan.
Right.
And then Roman Reigns, I mean, this was kind of the one that really showcased him first. I mean, he was already part of the Shield. He had been doing good things. He if you had to say who's really the leader or the tough guy of the Shield, it would have been Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was doing good in that Rumble, so they started getting behind him because he was still kind of an underdog. And then Batista returned. Batista had just returned not that long before that, like literally like a week or so before that. And he's in it and he wins, and all of a sudden he's being pushed. And so people were booing that. And that he won the Rumble, went to Mania, Daniel
Lost at
Bryan,
Mania
and
and then
lost that
disappeared.
Mania. Yeah, and then disappeared because he's going back to making movies. I mean, where he's making probably a lot more money.
And I'm sure he didn't like that triple threat match as much as anybody else probably didn't like
Well,
it. I mean,
because they put Daniel Bryan in the triple threat match.
They were
Uh,
forced to.
yeah,
They
they were
didn't have a
forced to go. Well,
choice.
the fans were like, "Look, we want Daniel Bryan."
We're
That's what they
not
were.
going to have Orton and Batista main event our WrestleMania without Daniel Bryan.
Right. And that was Vince McMahon not listening to the fans. He was dictating to the fans what they want to like and not like. And it's like that life doesn't work like that, dude.
So let me ask you that Royal Rumble winners that did not work out. We see them a lot actually, more periodically. Normally, a Royal Rumble winner typically goes into Mania and wins a championship. That was at least the trend for 6, 7 years
Um,
back
let
in the early 2000s.
let's see. Yokozuna was the first one to actually win a Rumble, where the stipulation was they got the title match at Mania.
Okay.
Before that, of course, well, the year prior was the first time the championship itself was on the line in the Rumble, because the whole story, Taker and Hogan was champion. Taker beat him at Survivor Series, though we had help from Flair, ironically enough. Um, like 5 days later, um, Taker loses it back to Hogan, but Hogan had thrown ashes in Taker's face that he pulled out of the. That was in, of course,
Was that the first championship Taker won?
yeah,
I don't even want to talk about that match. I hate that.
yeah,
That was the worst. The only reason why Hogan won it back was because he threw a fit to McMahon
yeah, and
and claimed that Taker landed him on his neck, which was not true. And
Taker
I'm
at the
sorry, that was a very story that
oh,
ruined Hogan for me.
and Taker at the time was only like 23 years old.
Come on.
It's a yeah, he was only like 23, maybe 24, and so he was still pretty young in the business, and he was actually scared because he'd been accused of basically almost
And they
breaking the
didn't have
neck of the.
instant replay
Yeah,
at
well,
that time.
when you look at the replay, well, I mean, you can still see it. I mean, Hogan's head was a good 4 inches away from the mat, so it didn't even hit. But but they had, of course, they stripped the title, held it up from the This Tuesday in Texas pay per view. They were trying to look at holding pay per views on other days besides Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
Obviously, that didn't work, but they had the This Tuesday in Texas pay per view, which was not bad. By the way, I think that was also, was that the same pay per view? I'll have to look it up, where the snake clamped on to
Oh, was that the
Randy
time
set.
too?
Yeah, I think it was the same
Oh,
one. By the way, do you know who the referee was for that match?
that wasn't our local referee, was it?
It was our favorite local promoter,
Roger Ruffin.
Roger Ruffin. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was actually the ref for that match. So he got to see it firsthand. I don't blame him for not stepping in. If the snake bites him, it sucks to be you, dude. I'm out. But anyway, and so they held the title up, and at the '92 Royal Rumble in January, of course, Flair goes in. By the way, if you ask me what my favorite Rumble was, what I think the best one was, it was '92 still. That one was just, if you look at all the people who were in that Rumble, all the at the time, the former world champions who were in that Rumble, plus there was also some future world champions in that Rumble as well. That was still my favorite, but that was the first time that the belt itself was actually put on as a stipulation of win the Rumble. Before that, I mean, it was just, you won the Rumble. Yay. Now what? There was nothing, there was no really, there was not really a prize for winning the Rumble. And so, I guess, probably to garner more interest in it, because, and also in '90 and '91, Hogan won both of those Rumbles. So they were still, um, they were still pushing Hogan to the moon, but people were really starting to get tired of Hogan. And, they're like, okay, Hogan wins again. Yay. And so when Flair won the title in the Rumble in '92, after that they said, okay, whoever wins the Rumble gets a title match at WrestleMania. Talking about the ones who did not win the title, who really didn't do much for them. In fact, it was almost a waste. Vince McMahon actually won the Rumble in '99, and then he gave up the title shot. He said, okay, I'm going to relinquish it. But of course, they went to the runner up, which was Stone Cold. So,
Right.
um,
Wasn't that also part of the Austin and McMahon feud?
yes. Um, the next year, it was The Rock who won it, but they showed on the replay Rock's feet actually touched the ground when he pulled Big Show over the top rope. So
Well, and
That
then we can't forget about the Rumble where both Cena and Batista touched ground. The unplanned.
that was unplanned.
You
That
can't
was
script that.
no. I mean, well, in '94 was the one they actually had the co-winners. That was Bret Hart and Lex Luger.
Right.
But that one they actually planned it, and
Now,
they relied on Bret Hart to
right.
actually make sure. Now the camera angles, if you look, there's no camera actually on their feet. They did that on
Right.
purpose, but at the
So
same time, they relied on Bret Hart
let me
to make
ask you
sure
this.
that.
Let me ask you this. If you got a chance to go back to the Rumble with Cena and Batista, where then you have the spiel, because this is what makes it exciting now, because not only you have two winners, one from Raw, one from SmackDown, and wasn't Cena was supposed to win that one?
No, Batista won it.
Batista was, well,
Yeah.
he won it. Okay, so not only you have um that, but then you have, so I'm just shaking up a bottle here for
You're fine.
but then you have Vince McMahon storming down to the ring because Edge tells a story how he's walking back, and as he sees Vince McMahon angry for whatever reason, and then he tears both of his quads getting into the
Getting
ring,
into the ring.
and then they just restart the match so that Batista could win. Batista, goes on to face, who does he face that year?
Let's see. That was in 2005.
So he's going on to face
Uh,
Booker T.
at the let's see.
No, not Booker T.
That was in WrestleMania 21. Let's see. Whoops.
JBL.
Well, they had a number one contenders tournament. Let's see here.
It was SmackDown.
Triple H.
Triple
Batista,
H.
he beat Triple H. Ric Flair accompanied Triple H.
This was part of the Evolution separating.
Yes.
Okay. Well, but this
And
is part of Batista separating himself, because
mhm,
Randy Orton separated a year prior, wins, he becomes the youngest WWE champion.
mhm.
And then Batista sees everything Randy does and knows that he's not just going to be a pawn or decoy or the bodyguard of Hunter. So, because, yeah, I mean, but okay. So knowing that now, would you have still kept that storyline going? Okay, they're going to restart the match. We had to have a winner, or could you had them compete for the number one contender spot at the next? Then they have Elimination Chamber still, or no? Was that not then yet?
I don't think they did, but I mean, but either way, I think because there's always at least one
Wasn't there like
pay-per-view.
No Mercy or something like that?
There's always at least one pay-per-view in between the Rumble and Mania. Sometimes
And so you
there's
could have
been two
always had them
pay-per-views.
had a one-on-one match, which would have been
Yes.
incredible, and then have Batista win another way to
Right.
earn the contender spot. But anyways, would you have changed that or kept it the same, knowing now what you
Um,
know? Well,
well, if they were planning on pushing Batista, I see why they restarted it, but because having the co-winners in '94 was not the most popular thing to do. Even back then, Bret Hart was really being pushed.
yeah.
Luger was being pushed, and he probably shouldn't have been, but that was a story, for back then. They were
Mm.
trying to have Luger basically be the replacement for Hulk Hogan, and it was never going to work. Because Luger, his personality was, Hogan would actually go out and meet the fans. Luger would not. So there was a big difference. Now Luger's a changed person now. He's actually apparently he's like one of the nicest guys now. They said he was not back then. But with Batista and Cena, um, and I think this is also kind of a thing that shows WWE sometimes they don't plan for the unforeseeables. Now,
Yeah.
having two people legitimately, because anytime you watch that video back, you try to slow it down and try to tell me who actually hit first. And, one of them had to have, but it was so close that the human eye just could not distinguish it. And if you didn't plan for something like that, because who would have thought, especially the way they did it, when Batista picked up Cena and then just lost his balance, and they just went,
Yeah.
tumbling over the top rope, and you say, well, who hit
You would have
first?
thought Cena would have went down faster. I don't know.
But
That's
they could
what
they couldn't have planned that the way that one happened.
in my lifetime. That is probably one of my favorite, Royal Rumble matches because I mean, we gotta. I mean, I don't know. There's just something to me about from the Attitude Era. Oh no, not the Attitude Era. The Ruthless Aggression Era.
Right.
There's just something to me that stands out in those venues that in those Royal Rumbles that just were so priceless that you go back now and maybe because they're all legends now, right? They're
Right.
all future Hall of Famers. And I'm sure you probably, you may have felt the same way, at that time saying, oh, well, back in the 90s, with all these, the Lex Lugers, the Bret Hart, Yokozuna, Hulk Hogan, things are definitely changed. And it's not the same. But yeah, I think, for me, and if you asked me splitting down what, because they also were very creative around the Ruthless Aggression Era with the Royal Rumble,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, tell me if I'm not, because I'm just thinking about this. We talk about statistics. Was there any time in history where a Royal Rumble winner was not able to compete for that title at Mania because of an injury or for whatever reason?
You know what? I don't. I think every
And
single time.
and if
Well,
that's the case, then isn't that a statistic themselves itself? Because you're telling me a 7 years or 36 years, not including this year, you're going off of the notion that someone that you had 60 days before Mania, before you can um with someone who wins, obviously they're competing in other matches, getting ready for Mania, and they did not injury because
it,
a lot of people sustain injuries all the time.
with the exception of Vince McMahon winning it because
Okay.
that should have never happened either. But um, I don't think anybody. Yeah, so I'm looking through the list right now, and no, um,
That's a pretty remarkable.
yeah, nobody has actually gotten hurt prior to Mania. The closest anybody came to actually not getting the title shot, though, as far as I know, they had the whole thing with when The Rock when the only time he won the Rumble, by the way,
Mhm.
that was in 2000. And like I said, when he eliminated Big Show, his Rock's feet actually touched the ground first.
Right.
And they showed that later on. It was a screw up, but it happened. But they'd already declared The Rock the winner, so they said, okay, it's going to be a triple threat: The Rock and Big Show against whoever the champion was at the time. I think it was Triple H. And then just to add even more drama to it, that's when they added Mick Foley, and that was the Fatal Four Way. That was the Mania. They only had one match that was a singles match. Everything else was um like triple threat, four ways, whatever.
Right.
That was in 2000. That Mania is considered like one of the worst ones,
Right.
um, but that was one they had the McMahon in every corner. That's
Right.
the Fatal Four Way. So, but that's the closest I know because they said that Big Show was still pretty green
Mhm.
because he had only been with the company like maybe a year. They realized in WCW they had not taught him a lot of things that they should have taught him. They were just like, "You're big, just go in there and
Oh
wrestle."
yeah. I mean, and you hear their stories from guys like Kane, Taker that they had to really shape him, and this was more of a
Yeah,
business. He learned more about the business in the WWE than anything else.
right. And he was actually sent to OVW for a bit
Just
to
to
actually,
yeah.
yeah, to lose weight. That was part of it. And to stop smoking because apparently Big Show he was a chain smoker for a bit. But yeah, that's as far as I know. That's like the only times they came close. Now, I mean, hopefully we don't jinx somebody by this year all of a sudden somebody goes in there and then they win it, but then they get hurt. But I mean,
Right.
they have I don't know if we want to call it contingency plans, but
No,
when somebody gets hurt, you
what do
know,
you do?
they have to have some kind of plan because otherwise you can't say they would you would think they would have to plan for injuries. because injuries happen whether they want to or not. Injuries, are not planned. Obviously, you can have a planned surgery, but you're not going to plan for somebody specifically to have an injury. So they need to have something like that. Say, okay, if this person gets injured, who's going to be the person to step in?
So in your, in your thoughts, when it comes out of Rumble, should the winner of the Rumble, I mean, yeah, they get the title,
Mm-hmm.
with choosing, but should it be an automatic win? Are you okay with them coming up short? Because
Um,
Cody's done it. Brock's what? I think Brock's done it. I believe
they,
Ronda did it, right? Didn't Ronda lose, or does she win a couple years
um,
ago when she won,
I
came
think she
back
had.
and won the.
I think she won the title. Let me see. Let me look that
I've
up.
just noticed that there's been athletes that have won the Royal Rumble recently, more recently than not, but then they go on to lose that title. And I think it's okay every once in a while because yeah, it's an opportunity and it's not guaranteed, but does it get in the way? Does it become a pointless matter? Because the only one I see out of the people who have lost is Cody, because now there's a story behind it, because he obviously wanted to win that title that his family is trying to capture, right, in the WWE.
Right,
And
because Dusty never held the uh
Goldust never held it either.
right.
So, and obviously that failed, but there's a story afterwards that now is more is better telling, because you could be like, all right, he's having to climb his way back up to the top. You got this break, you lose it, you go down to the bottom, now you're climbing your way to the top. And but all these other ones, you lose it, you're done. You kind of maybe you carry on one more month, but you kind of just become an afterthought. Like Edge, for example. Edge won that Royal Rumble, ends up getting put into a triple threat match with Daniel and Roman, ends up losing. And then they just blow it off like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, that was just a couple years ago too. Yeah, Ronda, she lost Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania that year.
Wasn't
Um,
that the year that Brock lost?
you know what? Let me.
Because Brock won it. I was furious that year. Brock won it. He ended up lose. He ended up going back. That was the same night or earlier that month. Then I swear, I'm sorry, but didn't he win? This is when they unified the titles. He went on to win the title against.
Let me look. Um, sorry, I'm having to rely on Wikipedia.
Didn't
Um,
he like win the Royal Rumble? And then went on to the Fatal 5-Way or something like that because Bobby was sick or something. Won
Brock
the title.
Brock won. Let's see. He came into the Royal Rumble as the lost to Bobby Lashley in the opening match. And then he came back. I remember this too because I was about ready to throw stuff at my TV. He came back as the surprise number 30 entrant in the Rumble, won the match. Sorry, Kyle. I know you're a big Brock fan, but I was not a fan of that. But sorry, Kyle. He's former co-host, huge Brock Lesnar fan. And
And that was the year that they, for both Brock and Roman, unified the titles.
yes, it was because Brock won the title at the Elimination Chamber. That was when Bobby Lashley got hurt. Still came in the chamber, but they had him getting hurt at the chamber and then couldn't compete. And so
Right.
he lost. I mean, he was legitimately hurt. And so they had to like, oh crap, he's got the title. So
But
we need
but
to,
then both Brock, the Royal Rumble winner, and Ronda, the Royal Rumble winner for the women's
both of them
side.
lost.
And I was like,
Well,
isn't that just a waste of pure
they
of
did,
like growth?
they did the same thing in 2018. It was the first year they had the women's rumble. Asuka won that one. Shinsuke won the men's. They both lost at WrestleMania.
Wasn't Asuka facing Charlotte?
Yes, because and then Asuka, all of a sudden they just had her just sliding downhill for a while because
I know.
she was undefeated in NXT before she jumped to the main roster,
Right.
which was normally before they left NXT. If they were a title holder, they would drop the title to somebody. But they didn't do that with her because Asuka, I mean, she was phenomenal. She still
He
is.
was being, yep.
And she came in main roster. They were pushing. And then when she lost to Charlotte, she lost like every match for a year after that.
Well, let's not forget about Shayna Baszler. She was at the top of the NXT Women's Division. She
Mm-hmm.
ended up dropping the title, and then moving up to main roster. Now she's just below this
And
average
and
athlete.
I don't get that because Shayna Baszler is very legit. You know,
Well, I
she
mean, I think they're using her a little bit better now with Zoe Stark, but I mean, she's way behind. I think she's lost too
mhm.
much time to really build herself up to be anything.
And of course, I don't think it should be an automatic that they win. I do like the automatic title shot because it does add a stipulation, and you kind of want to see that, especially when you're watching the Rumble now. People watch it, and now it's the anticipation of who's the next person. Which, by the way, they say every 90 seconds. Some years been 2 minutes. One year it
I
was
know.
1 minute.
I'm
If
always
you,
timing it.
yeah, if you try to time it, don't.
But when does that? They don't. They're also not clear when does it start. Does it start from when that next person enters the ring? Does it start when they enter, the stage? Is
It's
there a
supposed to.
halfway point?
It's supposed to be, and this is the way they line it out. Now, Bruce Pritchard has actually talked about on his podcast. Yeah, it's never right on 90 seconds, whatever.
I've
Sometimes it just
also heard that between the two wrestlers before and then that person, like they're supposed to do like a little quick 90-second thing. So as soon as that comes done, then they're counting down like maybe 15, within a time
right. I
frame.
mean, you would think like any kind of stopwatch situation like that, that as soon as the 90 seconds ding, whoop, the next one's automatically starting, but
But
it's
sometimes
they
these
don't do that.
venues, you have to admit, by the time someone gets down to the ring with how long the entrance is, that 90
Yes.
seconds is up.
Yes, because now, and I don't remember which was the first year. I think it was 2019, maybe in
Wasn't that in
2020.
Arizona or something like that? Or where
Yes, because now, yeah, they're doing the
people
Rumble.
got carried down to the ring.
If this tells you how big the Rumble itself as an event has gotten, and it's because of the Royal Rumble match. Most people couldn't tell you the other matches on the card, because
Yeah.
especially now that they have two Rumble matches, those are two matches that are both going to last over an hour. So it does not leave you much time
They
for
only got
anything
like
else.
two, maybe three matches at best.
Right.
But
But now that like this year they're having a Tropicana Field down in Tampa. So of course, I mean that is a long walk from the back,
well, and
and
I'm sorry to say this, but they could always build a tunnel, do something that can, bring it closer. And they just choose not to because they want the fans there on the floor. I think they think it's more exciting. I don't know. I don't necessarily like the long entrances, but I mean they're big enough to host. Royal Rumble's big enough to host at a stadium, I guess.
yeah. And now we also don't know how many seats are empty, but it may be a case of the Rumble has gotten so big, it's too big for an arena, but not quite big enough for a stadium. And so it's kind of hard to find that middle ground. But
Well, it goes back to the whole saying of, all right, I'd rather have it sold out, and I'm sorry, but if you don't get a chance to purchase your tickets, I can't make everyone happy. I'd rather have a
right,
sold out arena than having half the stadium empty, because you also think about this. How much do you think that stadium costs to rent? And I mean, yeah, WWE could afford it, but we go back to like to AEW. How much is it to rent out Heritage Bank Arena compared to renting out maybe the Fifth and Third Bank Arena at the University of Cincinnati? You know what I'm saying?
mm,
I get it, less seats, but it's probably not as expensive.
probably not as expensive, and so you can recoup more of your money. But like you said, with the long entrances, depending on who it is. Now, if I would thinking, okay, if I was a wrestler, knowing that I'm going to be in this match for, 10, 15 minutes, maybe, even if I
Yeah,
know I'm not going to be winning it, but I know I'm going to be in there for a little bit, I'm not going to blow myself up running into the ring. I
exactly.
may jog, just kind of keep the blood flowing, but I'm not going to go on a full sprint. I'm
Well,
not going to
and
be,
then we see like Roman Reigns making his way to the ring 20 minutes later. I mean, it's almost as bad as the Undertaker on a regular night.
yes, yes,
And I
yeah.
mean, Undertaker's the only person I'd watch from start to finish for an entrance. Roman Reigns, I wouldn't. I could go watch a whole episode of The Big Bang Theory and then go back, and he still wouldn't be in the ring yet. I mean, that's
Right.
how bad it is.
And, so the Rumble, like I said, has gotten that big to where it's in
Mm-hmm.
stadiums now. Um, Probably,
Will it be international in the next few years?
well,
We are going that way.
the very first one was in Canada. So, um, but that would
I'm talking
actually,
about across seas. I'm
that,
talking about England or
you're like you said, I mean, they have kind of been going that way.
I mean,
The
besides WrestleMania, this is the only other premium live that's in the States. Next month is in Australia. The month after that is what, in England or something like that. I mean,
So they've been having more shows over in just the UK in general, besides
in
England
Europe,
and Wales.
which I like it.
I don't think they've had a show in Scotland yet, but they have had it obviously in London. They've had one in Cardiff in Wales.
I like it.
Um,
I mean,
yeah, I
it's
mean because there's a huge audience, there's a huge fan base over in just the UK
and
as
instead
a
of taking that
whole.
hit month after month in the US when you know people can't afford it or won't go to it all the time, you go out to the people who will and
Well,
first time.
that's the law of supply and demand.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you come over there every month, they're not gonna go. It's kind of like the NFL going over to London. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, because I saw this myself in 2011. The only NFL game I've ever been to was actually in London. I got free
Okay.
tickets to go watch the Bears and the Bucks. You
Right.
know, but now, I mean, yeah, the NFL, they were only doing one game a year then. Now they're doing like at least two games a year. There's more of a demand for it. But with wrestling, I mean, it's the fan base is a little bit different because we were talking like American football. That's why they had to give away tickets. Wrestling, though, they're going to come much, especially when they have like a Drew McIntyre, which by the way, they
Well,
said that's the Drew McIntyre's backyard. Drew McIntyre is Scottish. He's not Welsh.
okay,
Right.
so but here's my problem with that is that how many what's the I don't want to say this without like being disrespectful, but how many people come across the seas just to see WrestleMania? A lot.
A
I
lot.
mean, it's
Yeah.
more than the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, and so why not take? I mean, I'm telling you, in the next decade, I would not be surprised if WrestleMania will be held in the UK or something like that. I
I
mean,
can
I
see
know
that.
that's far fetched, but I wouldn't be
Well,
surprised.
I mean, they had SummerSlam in London in '92. '92 was a good year for wrestling, by the way. But yeah, they had SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium, not Wembley Arena, but Wembley Stadium in '92. They've had other events in the UK since then. The Clash at the Castle in
Mm-hmm.
Cardiff, that was a huge, huge event, and I know
Yeah,
they've done another one since then. I cannot for the life of me think of what it was off the top of my head. And of course, AEW did their own event over there. The
yeah.
Rumble, because the Rumble, I could see them doing. I'm glad they're going back to Australia.
You could
Um,
also get independent. See, you talk about outside people. Just imagine you go back to the UK and you pick up a couple of those indie wrestlers out there and just, hey, one deal only, just to get a fan hit from the,
right.
locals. Just toss them in. They're not going to win, but you know what? They'll get it. It would draw. I mean, it just draws so much money. And right now, when you have a lot of these WrestleMania, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but I really feel like you get a lot more internationals. I mean, Puerto Rico was such a huge hit
Yes.
last year. I mean, and why not continue that? Go to go to them. Go to the people that are going to buy you stuff. Yes, we're going to be fine here. We're going to be a little butthurt, but because we don't get all the glory, but we're going to be just okay. As long as we get a chance to see it and see the good
Hmm.
talent, it may start influencing us. All right, take advantage when they are here. But I know if you go do house shows, you go do regular Raw, SmackDown shows out there more often. And I know this might be a different topic for a different episode, but I mean, I like it, and I just when it comes down to Royal Rumble, one of the four, they already did SummerSlam. One of the four big pay per views: Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Right? They've
Hmm.
already done SummerSlam. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mania eventually go out there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rumble or Survivor Series to go out there. And it's all good business. That's what it is. It's
And
good business.
I think you'd have to make sure that you had, well, people will travel to America, but when it comes to other places, they might not travel to some of the other countries.
Yeah.
It is a little bit different. I can tell you
Okay.
that just
I
from
fear you.
traveling to different countries myself. Um,
Right.
Especially with not right now with the way you have skirmishes going on,
Yeah. I get
places,
it.
so it may be a little harder. Not only that, but I was thinking about the Royal Rumble because there's going to be and this is not even including like the undercards, the non-rumble matches, you're going to have to make sure you have at least 60
60.
performers,
Yeah.
30 in each match, men's and
Well,
women's,
you have at least
who
100. I could tell you at least a minimum of 100
100 well, including all the personnel, the
stage
commentators,
crew.
the other
Yeah,
all that. I mean, so you're going to have at least 100, probably upwards of like 100. Well, it depends. Some cases they may end up using local workers to do some of the stuff. It all
true.
depends on, if it's a situation like there's certain places in the States, you bring in your own, but there's other places like you go around like Chicago, New York, very heavily unionized. You're
Yeah.
going to use their local people because if not, you're not going to be put on the show. They
Well,
won't let
from
you.
my understanding, um you have WWE has crew members regionally. And so they use their regional crew members so that, besides like the main show, they have a crew for Raw and they have a crew for SmackDown. But for these
Mhm,
WWE live events, they have regions. So
mhm.
someone has all the West, there's a crew for all the West Coast, there's a crew for all the Midwest and the East Coast and the South and this and that. So that's the last time I understand. I know budget cuts have been made, so maybe that's different now, but yeah, it does happen that way. Royal Rumble, who was your favorite Royal Rumble winner?
Probably when Flair won in '92. Um,
Okay.
on top of that, plus Rey Mysterio, just because Rey Mysterio, when he won it, that was, you had a real life scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero passing away. He was Rey Mysterio's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, or one of his best friends. Chris Benoit was actually, but Chris,
Right.
we know what happened with Benoit. Just because of what it meant for Rey Mysterio. Plus, he was the smallest guy in the locker room, and here he is, going. He was number
Right.
two, and he
Number two.
won
But
the
with
whole
Shawn
thing.
Michaels number one,
That year,
I believe Shawn was number one.
it may have been. Let's see if I can find it. Um,
Who was a Royal Rumble? Who was a person that did not win the Royal Rumble that should have won the Royal Rumble in your mind?
I'd have to go back and look at some of the Rumbles. I did not. I wasn't down with Edge winning a few years ago. Um, just because Edge. I mean, I thought
Did
it.
Christian deserve a Royal Rumble?
No, Christian's number
No.
one.
Okay.
Christian's a good wrestler. I just don't. I can't see him winning a Rumble just because they never pushed him properly in WWE. So for him to win the Rumble, that meant they'd have to have a good push behind him anyway.
Dean
Um,
Ambrose?
maybe Ambrose. He's done better in AEW than what he did WWE. Del Rio should not have won. I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
Some people. Well, Roman Reigns probably should have won it that year, but they weren't ready to push him. The next year, they were pushing him, and he did win, and people booed him, partly because Daniel Bryan, once again, Daniel
Right.
Bryan probably should have won it the next year, but um,
Any Royal Rumble winners that should win it again? Sheamus.
I'd like to see Sheamus because Sheamus
Drew
needs
McIntyre, should he win it again?
actually he could be a pick to win it this year.
Well, and I was gonna lead you off of that. I mean, okay, is there anyone that's on the market right now that should consider dethroning Stone Cold or
What
tying
for the
Stone Cold?
for the third?
Yep.
Hmm. The roster right
I
now.
mean, it would be in a couple years, but
Um, well, maybe the person that can take out Stone Cold, or tie Stone Cold's record, maybe they're not even on the roster yet.
true.
You know, um, because
And
Cody
then
would have to win it at least once before he could win it twice and then a third time. I don't see them giving it to Lesnar, because Lesnar's already won two. I don't see them giving it to him again. I don't see them giving it to Edge again. Rollins maybe, but Rollins already has a title right now, so he's not going to win it. Well, Rollins has only won one that I know of. I can see them giving it to Orton just as like a last hurrah type thing. But are you really going to push Orton for the world title right now? He should be the one bringing
he
up
doesn't
the
have to win it. I mean, we've seen people not win the title.
right. So, well,
It could also be a potential feud with Cody.
maybe. But right now, I mean, it's almost obvious that they're going to be pushing the Rock and Roman at Mania. So that means that whoever wins the Rumble, unless the Rock helps Roman lose the title. I mean, help him pull some shenanigans to make him lose the title. Whoever's winning the Rumble is going after the other title, Rollins' title right now. Um, so as far
And
as
then
like
last but not
times,
least, but predictions for this year?
I'll do that next week.
Punk?
That's going to be my next week's show.
Any hints?
Nope. Because
Oh
I'd have to
man.
see what all goes on tonight and then Monday on Raw before I even try to give any kind of predictions.
Okay, does Punk have a chance? His first match back. I mean, his first televised last match back.
Punk win the Rumble.
And go
I don't.
face Rollins at Mania. I don't.
Um, like I said,
Does
we'll
he
we'll
deserve it?
we'll hit that next week. But some of the things I do want to hit on.
Yes.
This is actually part of my notes, and part of this I actually pulled up. Um, like because I'm kind of an Excel geek, and so I actually created something in Excel. All right. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
All right. One of the things that kind of caught my eye was these are the number of countries that have been represented in the men's Royal Rumble. And this is why I love wrestling so much, by the way.
Hey,
'Cause-
excuse, I got the little one here. He's just
hey,
bouncing
oh,
on
you
my
do.
knee.
Hey there, buddy.
Yeah.
Let me
Anyways,
let
yeah,
me
I'm watching.
let me zoom this in some. I just now realized how small the
Oh,
font
Autumn
was.
Rose is on that list.
Adam Rose, yeah, Adam Rose, yeah, he's that Adam Rose. He's on this right here. And see some of these names. I mean, you know how long it took me to make this. I had not updated it in a few years until last night. I was going through here, but when it says count of entrance, like that means I think Superfly he was in 4 different rumbles, but 22 different countries represented. Puerto Rico, I'm actually having it as a separate country, even though it is an American territory. But some of the ones that surprised me, I think Italy, that was and these are when I went through here. I mean, these are the countries where they were born and they were actually a citizen of these countries. You know, like Ghana, it's Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston, of course, was born in Ghana. But then, like Kane, Glenn Jacobs was born in Spain, but he was born to um, Americans who were actually working over in Spain. His dad was in the military, or he was a government worker. So I don't. Kane was never a Spanish citizen, but some of these other ones. I mean, if you look where they came from, but I thought that was so amazing that we have um, so far there have been 22 different countries represented in the men's Royal Rumble. What's wild is I have a feeling there's going to be at least one more country added to that this year. Because if you notice, there's one country missing from here that's actually been in the women's Rumble, including the current women's champion, Rhea Ripley. There's not been one Australian male in the Rumble, but there's been a few Australian women. But this year, between Grayson Waller and Bronson Reed, they're both Australian.
Okay.
So I have a feeling there's going
I
to be,
think Grayson Waller is going to easily walk in there.
yeah, and Bronson Reed. I mean, they're pushing him pretty hard right now. Of course, Yugoslavia, that one could also I could file under Croatia.
Yeah.
Did I not have Croatia in here?
So how much time did this take you to create?
Oh, it took a while. In fact, I'm actually missing a country on here because let me do this. What am I doing? What am I doing? Here we go. I can't see I have a feeling I'm actually missing a country on here. Um, um, Let me pull this down a little bit because I can't see because of the banner that's at the top. So I'm actually missing. There's actually Croatia because Nikolai Volkov. Nikolai
Ah,
Volkov is
okay.
actually Croatian. And
You're gonna have to post this so people could take a look at it.
oh,
I mean, I don't even think WWE has been this detailed.
you know what? It they've had some things on here that have had a little bit of detail. I mean, I just use Excel just because I'm kind of a nerd like that.
Yeah,
Um, and I just, yeah, Croatia's listed. I don't
just
know
hasn't
what.
updated. Maybe if you do throw your grand total down one more,
No, it's
slide that one.
it's a pivot table. But either
Oh,
way,
okay.
so I say 22 countries. Really, there's 23 because I know there's at least one missing. But I also have like I have all their birth dates in here just because
Oh my goodness.
I was trying to see, who was like the oldest, and um yeah, I don't know why it's not showing. I'm gonna have to go back and look and see why it's not, but it's still the data is still on here. That's Nikolai Volkov. Yeah, he was in two of them because he was in the very first one. Then he was, oh, I forgot he was there however many years later. But yeah, that's like some of the fun you can do with Excel. But that was one of the things I noticed was how many countries have been represented. And uh
And Steve, by the way, he's well educated in Excel. So you guys need anything done, organized, and put together.
yes, definitely come to me. I will tell you I don't do it for free.
No,
Um,
but
but
you're probably the best in what you do in the area.
I'll have to show you this other one that I made up after we finish this. It's about the NCAA tournament, the men's basketball tournament. But that was one of the things I noticed was wow, all the different countries represented, including somebody from Uzbekistan. You don't see that very often.
No,
But the oldest one, I probably shouldn't have dropped it. Actually, Jimmy Snuka, as far I think he was the actual oldest competitor. He was in his mid 60s. And honestly, it was in the 2008 Rumble. It was the one held in Madison Square Garden where Cena was the number 30 entrant and he made his comeback. He had gotten injured. I think he torn a pec, and he was supposed to be out like 6 months. Well, he came back after like 3.5, 4 months. So he showed up. That was the one in Madison Square Garden where they had Piper and Snuka in there reliving their feud from 1983 or 84. And because it was Madison Square Garden, and it was really sad to watch both of them. I'll be honest with you. But
yeah,
Um, but yeah, they were the oldest. They were some of the oldest ones. Vince McMahon, he was one of the oldest ones. But we already said Gunther, of course, had the longest time in one Rumble. Not including the greatest Royal Rumble because that was Daniel Bryan, but that was also 50 people. But Gunther, he was number one. He lasted all the way to the very end. And I think that was another case of that one. Even though he was already the Intercontinental Champion, by that point, that one was definitely what got people really to notice and like say, this guy is good. Gunther is very good. And he's the only one from Austria also in the that's been in the Rumble. But that country wasn't listed either. So it looks like it's about
oh
25
my
countries.
goodness.
Yeah.
You're gonna
I'm
have
at
to update it, and
I'm at
then
to figure out why it's not pulling that data in.
post it up on your Facebook, page, and let people see.
Maybe. I might just have to do that, but I'm kind of guarded when it comes to my Excel things like that.
Yeah,
You know, um, but I could tell you why in a little bit, um, but the person with the longest cumulative amount of time is actually Chris Jericho,
yeah,
somebody who's never won a Rumble.
no,
Chris Jericho
should
never
have.
won, but should have
He deserved
probably.
it in the early 2000s. I mean, he was the workhorse. If I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken, he was one of the most pivotal athletes that transitioned into
Yeah.
WWE very well. He was into some very sticky. He was in such a very so many sticky situation or storylines that could have got him released and
Hmm.
fired with one wrong word because he had to go and get himself involved with Stephanie McMahon and
Hmm.
Triple H, and around the time they were
He
getting married,
actually almost did get fired because of China.
and then he had the WrestleMania feud of who am I going to wrestle? I'm not going to wrestle him. I demand to be on the this type of
Hmm.
card. But you know what? That's what I respect to him about so much because he didn't disrespect his own his bosses, but he stood up for what he knew what he was worth,
Yes.
and he did overcome that.
Hmm.
I don't know if he did that today in the WWE. You probably just hit the can. We'll see.
Yep.
in the next life. But
But yeah, so um to kind of round us up, before we finish off, yeah, the Rumble to me, I mean, I actually look more forward to the Rumble every year than what I do Mania, than I do any other pay-per-view. And partly because, I mean, people like that anticipation. I think, and other people feel the same way. And plus, like you said, they call it the road to WrestleMania. However, the road to WrestleMania really starts at the preparation for the Rumble, which would start at day one.
I told you day one. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry if the Rock's return did not get you excited for WrestleMania this year, even if you don't see Dwayne Johnson, if that did not get you any excited for what's to come this year alone, because day one sets the table for what WWE has all year long. I
And
mean,
uh, this is also, as far as I know, this is be the first Rumble where
under Triple H.
Under Triple H, where Vince McMahon has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with any of it, because last year he still had,
Yep.
his hands in the pie. The year before that, he was there, but he let Shane do it, and that one ended up being
Wrong.
that was bad. That one ended up
Take
being
it
a big,
back.
and ended up getting Shane got fired by his own dad 2 days later.
At
Um,
least he didn't let him run WrestleMania.
he
I
didn't. I
mean,
mean, well, Shane put himself in the Rumble, and then he actually had
he
him
took out.
almost.
I think he took out the original person that was supposed to win it. I think.
Yeah,
I don't.
something. Well, that was the one where Lesnar came in number 30, and that was another reason why that Rumble was just horrible.
Yeah, that was. I
Um,
don't know.
and I don't know, some
You
people say,
know,
but
I, all I can say is that we have TKO, we have Hunter. We have not been disappointed. We have a lot of positive things to look forward to, and that's why there's just so much greatness. And I don't know, to be honest, have you ever felt this excited to go into the Rumble before?
before, yeah, I
The
mean, but it's been a while.
It's been
Um,
a while. I'm talking about maybe, I want to honestly say, probably a decade while. I mean, I would argue within the last 10 years, we found a good the lead up to Royal Rumble also has been pretty good because you know what? They haven't been focused on the Royal Rumble.
bless
They've been
you,
focused on awesome matches. Thank you.
little man over
So
there sneezing.
I'm excited to see what comes. Hopefully, this is just a new line and a new fresh start for what we can see and the creativity that we could see out of the Rumble again. I think there's another spark to it that we haven't seen in the last 10 years. So, and it's going to, hopefully, if it doesn't disappoint, it's going to bring me back to what we were seeing 20, 30 years ago for the reasons why we loved watching it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because we like to see, okay, who's going to win. We'd like to kind of bet on our favorites. Next week, I am planning on doing a prediction show for the Rumble, the pay-per-view, not just the two Rumble matches, but the actual pay-per-view itself. I'll go ahead and give my prediction for the women's match, though, because I do it every year. I don't care if she's not on the roster or not. Ember Moon. I was always high on Ember Moon. Loved
is she
watching Ember
released
Moon.
from Ring of Honor?
No, I'm saying Ember Moon to win WWE. I always put that, even if I know she's not going to be
Oh,
there.
okay.
That's always, just ask Waylon. He'll tell you that's always my prediction, Ember Moon, because I think Ember Moon should have won it one of those years. Because
She
Ember Moon,
should. She's such a good talent.
I can't. Oh my God, what is her name now? I cannot think of her
I
name
know.
now. But yeah, she was
Ring of Honor,
amazing.
right?
Yeah, she's Ring of
Yeah.
no, no, yeah, she is Ring of Honor. That's right. Yep. Because yeah, I think she's amazing. So, but anyway, that'll be the show next week. Um, we'll have to see. If I
Hopefully Dwayne comes back on. If
maybe
not,
Dwayne
I'm
come back. If not,
available. I mean,
and
you could just
if
have a round table with all your,
maybe
all the wrestling podcast buddies. I don't know. I'm
maybe,
just,
I mean, because it's going to be a prediction show, so that would actually be kind of cool.
yeah,
Hopefully, like I said, hopefully, Dwayne can be back. We'll have to see.
yeah,
He's taking care of business right now, and I did not want to stress him out anymore because what family always comes first, and because we've had to stop the show before because of family issues,
right.
but he was very grateful for everybody who came in and stepped in because um, he knows that sometimes the show does have to hopefully go on, but we everybody, everybody wishes Dwaylen best of luck. He's always in our thoughts and prayers. Hopefully everything kind of comes together and he can actually come back to the show. But maybe that'll be next week. But even if he doesn't come back, I know he'll give me his predictions. He always does. So but we will just have to see. But until we can talk again next week, thank you so much, Justin, for coming on
Thank
and
you.
standing in. Not the first time you've done this for us. So,
Won't be last, I don't think.
yep. So we'll have a good time. But until we can actually speak again, say good day and God bless.
Take care.